Hi, welcome back. This is Kari. Happy you're here with me today. This is your sacred space for diving deep into the mystical, the meaningful, and the magical aspects of our everyday lives. Before we begin, take a moment to settle in, whether you're walking, driving, or curled up with a cup of tea. Let yourself arrive fully in this moment. We're about to journey back thousands of years to uncover the sacred truth behind one of our most beloved celebrations. Now, here's something that might surprise you. Did you know that when your kids go trick or treating this Halloween, they're actually participating in an ancient Celtic ritual that was believed to help souls escape purgatory? Or that the jack-o'-lantern sitting on the porch is carrying on a protective magic tradition that's over 1,000 years old. Tonight, we're peeling back the layers of Halloween to reveal its profound spiritual origins. This isn't about trivia, it's about understanding how our ancestors encoded spiritual wisdom into celebrations that we still honor today, often without realizing the deeper magic we're participating in. Let's start at the very beginning with Samhain, the ancient Celtic festival that gave birth to our modern Halloween. This wasn't just a party, this was the Celtic New Year, marking the sacred transition from the light half of the year to the dark half. Picture this. You're living in ancient Ireland, Scotland, or Wales around 2,000 years ago. The harvest is complete, the crops are stored, and winter is approaching. But this isn't just a change of seasons. Your ancestors believed this was when the veil between the world of the living and the world of the dead became so thin that spirits could freely cross over. Now, this wasn't necessarily scary to them, the way we might think. Yes, they were aware that harmful spirits might cross over, but they also knew that their beloved ancestors, their guides, and benevolent beings could visit too. It was like the spiritual equivalent of having all of the borders open for one magical night. The Druids, who were the priests and spiritual leaders of Celtic society, performed elaborate rituals during Samhain. They would light massive bonfires on hilltops, not just for warmth, but as sacred beacons. These fires served dual purposes. They guided friendly spirits home to their families, and they created protective barriers against any malevolent entities trying to cross over. And here's what I find fascinating. The Druids practiced divination during Samhain because they believed the spiritual realm was most accessible. They would read the future in the flames of their sacred fires, in the patterns of the shadows, and in the behavior of animals. They understood that when the veil is thin, information flows more freely between dimensions. And here's something beautiful. Samhain was also about honoring the cycle of death and rebirth. It wasn't morbid, it was sacred recognition that death is part of life's natural rhythm. They celebrated the wisdom that comes from embracing both light and shadow, life and death, seen and unseen. Now, let's talk about how trick or treating evolved from something called souling. This story is going to give you chills in the best way. During medieval times, particularly in Ireland, Scotland, and England, poor people would go door to door on All Souls' Day, November 2nd, offering to pray for the homeowner's deceased loved ones in exchange for soul cakes. These weren't just any cakes, they were specifically baked for this purpose and often marked with crosses or other sacred symbols. Here's the profound part. It was believed that each soul cake eaten would help free a soul from purgatory. So when someone gave you a soul cake, and you ate it while praying for their deceased family member, you were performing a spiritual service. You were helping souls transition to their next stage of existence. Can you imagine if our modern day trick or treating carried this level of sacred intention? Every piece of candy given and received is an act of spiritual service. But there's more. The practice of mumming involved people dressing up as spirits, ghosts, or otherworldly beings and going door to door. This wasn't just for fun. There was a belief that actual spirits might join these groups of disguised humans, and homeowners couldn't tell who was human and who wasn't. So they would offer food and hospitality to anyone just in case they were entertaining actual spirits. This is where our costume tradition comes from, but originally costumes served as spiritual camouflage. If harmful spirits were wandering around, you could disguise yourself as one of them to avoid being recognized or targeted. Pretty brilliant protective magic, right? And the tradition of having to perform for your treats, that comes from guising, particularly popular in Scotland, where trick or treaters had to recite poems, tell jokes, or sing songs, or perform some kind of entertainment to earn their treats. It was about energy exchange. You give something creative, you receive something nourishing. The jack o' lantern story is pretty cool. It starts with an Irish legend about a character known as Stingy Jack. According to the legend, Jack was a notorious trickster who managed to trap the devil not once, but twice. In one version, he tricks the devil into climbing a tree and then carves crosses into the bark so the devil can't come down until he promises never to take Jack's soul. Clever, right? But here's the twist. When Jack dies, he's too sinful for heaven, but the devil, still angry about being tricked, won't let him into hell either. So Jack is condemned to wander the earth for eternity with only a hollowed out turnip with a burning coal inside to light his way. The Irish began carving scary faces into turnips, potatoes, and beets, placing candles inside them to ward off Jack's wandering spirit and other malevolent entities. These were called Jack of the Lantern or jack o' lanterns. When Irish immigrants came to America during the potato famine, they discovered that pumpkins native to North America were much easier to carve than turnips. And honestly, thank goodness, because have you ever tried to carve a turnip? It's like trying to carve a rock. But here's what I want you to remember. Every jack o' lantern you see is carrying on an ancient tradition of protective magic. Your neighbors aren't just decorating, they're creating spiritual guardians for their homes, whether they realize it or not. The carved faces are meant to look scary to frighten away harmful spirits. The light inside represented the divine spark, the sacred flame that no darkness could extinguish. So every jack o' lantern is essentially a lighthouse for good spirits and a warning beacon for harmful ones. Let's talk about some Halloween traditions that have sacred origins you probably never knew about. Bobbing apples seem like just a fun party game, right? Wrong. This was serious divination magic. Young people, particularly young women, would bob for apples to divine information about their future romantic partners. The apple you managed to catch would reveal characteristics of your future spouse, or sometimes the initial of their name would appear when you peeled the apple in one long strip. So they probably didn't have any Kevins then. I don't know. Apples were sacred in Celtic tradition, associated with the other world and immortality. The Isle of Avalon, where King Arthur was taken to heal, translates to Isle of Apples. So, using apples for divination connected you directly to otherworldly wisdom. Black cats. Oh, how we've gotten this one wrong. In Celtic and other ancient traditions, black cats were considered sacred familiars, magical companions who could transverse between worlds. They were honored, not feared. The association with evil came much later during periods of religious persecution when anything connected to older spiritual practices was demonized. The tradition of telling ghost stories on Halloween connects to the ancient practices of honoring ancestors and sharing their stories. But it was also practical. These stories often contained warnings about spiritual dangers and guidance about how to protect yourself from harmful entities. And here's something beautiful. The practice of leaving offerings on doorsteps or windowsills during Halloween time connects to the ancient tradition of feeding spirits. Our ancestors knew that hospitality extended beyond the physical realm. So, how can we honor these ancient traditions in our modern celebrations? First, consider creating a sacred element in your Halloween celebrations. Like, set up a small ancestor altar with photos of loved ones who've passed. Light a candle for them and share their stories. Remember that this is the season when they're closest to us. If you're giving out candy, do it with intention. Bless the treats. Send good wishes to the children who will receive them. Remember the soul cake tradition? You're participating in an energy exchange that can be sacred if you make it so. When you carve pumpkins, set an intention for protection and guidance. You're not just decorating, you're creating sacred guardians for your home. Try some divination this season. The veil is thin, making it an ideal time for receiving spiritual guidance, whether it's tarot cards, pendulum work, or simply sitting quietly and asking for signs. This is prime time for spiritual communication. And if you encounter black cats this season, send them a blessing instead of crossing the street. They're carrying on an ancient tradition of magical companionship. Most importantly, remember that this season is about honoring the sacred cycle of life, death, and rebirth. It's about embracing mystery, welcoming the unknown, and recognizing that there's so much more to existence than what we can see with our physical eyes. As we wrap up tonight's journey into Halloween's sacred origins, I want you to remember that you're part of an unbroken chain of humans who have honored these sacred season for thousands of years. When you participate in Halloween traditions, whether you're trick or treating with kids, carving pumpkins, or just appreciating the spooky decorations in your neighborhood, you're connecting with ancient wisdom that understands something we're only beginning to remember, that the seen and unseen worlds are intimately connected, and certain times of year offer us special opportunities to experience that connection. Your ancestors encoded profound spiritual truths into celebrations that have survived Christianity, commercialization, and centuries of cultural change. The magic is still there, waiting for us to remember, to honor, to participate consciously. This Halloween, I invite you to add just one sacred element to your celebration. Light a candle for your ancestors. Set an intention when you carve your pumpkins. Bless the treats you give out. Share a story about a loved one who's passed. Do something that honors the deeper magic of the season. Remember, the magic has never left. We just forgot how to see it. You are so loved, so supported, and so much more magical than you know. Until next time, keep listening for the whispers.